Hello people with sparkling eyes, I'm Gabriele Chiapparini, welcome to Small Photobook Cult. If you like our videos, please like them, remember to leave comments, and remember to click like, and of course to subscribe to this channel. Today's book, Flower Drink the River, is an intimate, raw glimpse into the photographer's first 2 years of gender transition, set against the backdrop of rural right-wing Maine. Through powerful photographs, the work tenderly explores themes of identity, community, and the profound search for beauty and belonging, revealing a resilient spirit in the middle of challenging surroundings and unconventional rituals. Welcome to the episode 22 of Small Photobook Cult. We are here with Pia Guilmoth. Hello, Pia. I'm really happy to have you here.
Thank you, Gabriella. It's so nice to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thanks to you. So maybe we can start speaking about the project in general, just to, doing a kind of introduction of the project, if you want.
Sure. I guess Flower Drink the River started in 2022. It took, I guess I worked on it from 2022 until middle of, or sort of till the beginning of 2024. And it's sort of after my previous book was released with Stanley Barker, the At Night Gardens Grow, I had released that book, and most of that work was made, years and years prior. Sort of took a long time for me to make that first book. And at the time that it was released, I was experiencing just a lot of intense things in my own life, and a lot of things were falling apart, and I was just totally unable to make work once that book was released, and just for many reasons. I was, at the time, I had just lost my job. I was just going through a period of intense depression. I had lost the housing where I was in Maine, and things were just falling apart. I was totally unable to get health insurance, and didn't really know how to take the next steps towards transitioning. And sort of I think at the time it felt like this impossible task, because healthcare is so expensive, and I think for that reason, I just had given up in a way. And I ended up moving back into my parents' house in rural New Hampshire. And, they live in this tiny little house, and my grandparents lived there too. And it's just I had no privacy. I was living in my childhood bedroom. I had none of my friends around me. I was just completely isolated in this small town. And, at least I had sort of the landscape that was familiar in that I love. But I think not having community really made that period of time incredibly, hard and pretty destructive for me. I moved into my parents, wasn't really making anything at all. I was way too depressed. I was suicidal at the time, and I was just I also didn't have a car, so I was just stuck in the middle of this place with no way to travel, and no way to see friends, and so wasn't making work at all, and was just drinking and sort of wandering around the woods kind of aimlessly, and not really doing much. And then in the middle of 2022, I got a phone call from my friend in Maine who was, she had this place open up, central Maine in this really small town. Her family owned, and she offered me to live there. And so I think when I heard that news, I said things just instantly from that moment when I heard that news, things started to look up and really change, and I felt hopeful again. And so fast forward, I basically I started making the steps to move back up to Maine. And a couple weeks before I actually left my parents' house to move to Maine, I started making photographs again, because I felt sort of this fire lit under me, where I was like finally like excited again, and I was like feeling hopeful, and I was like everything was like looking up, and so I started making work again. And I only ended up making like a couple photographs in that time period, right before I moved back to Maine. The first one actually was is the photograph of me and the deer in the field, which I think is maybe sort of like the genesis of the book. I feel like that photograph is sort of like emblematic of like starting change and like in like my life changing again and things looking up. So I made that photograph, and then a couple of weeks after that, I finally moved up to Maine. And as soon as I was up here, I was, I live in where I moved to in Maine is very small. It's like there's only like 1,500 people in the town. It's just like it's very secluded in that sense. But I also had a few friends who were living up here, and so I sort of had this small community, and all of whom happened to be trans and queer women, and it's sort of like I felt like I had community again. And shortly after that, because Maine actually has a really good healthcare system for poor people, I was able to get on free healthcare, and I started seeing a doctor, and I started getting hormones and started my transition. So just all of these things were just sort of like connecting and like in like feeding my life. And yeah, and I guess that is sort of like how this book came to be. Is I moved to a place where I had community, and when was finally like feeling happiness and joy again. And with that, making all of this new work, that's all really like exploring the surroundings here where I live, and exploring like taking photographs of my friends, and really like getting back into feeling like inspired by life and making things. And yeah, and that is the beginning of Flowers Drink the River.
And what about the title?
A lot of the times I feel like with titles, I sort of like I think in the beginning when I'm creating a title, they sometimes don't really mean anything. They're just like words that they're words strung together that I really like love. And so it's just me usually writing in a notebook, just like basically like making a list of like my favorite words at that moment in time, and trying to find something that's both like not super specific, but also can sort of like speak to some of the things that are in the photographs, flowers and water, and basically things at that time. And at this time, I still live in the same place, but things that are sort of that I'm surrounded by at all times, are a part of my like daily and nightly life. And then as I was looking at these words that I had chosen, I was also thinking about the fact that year in where I lived, there was some really like crazy intense flooding that had happened. And I live like right next to the river, like you can see it from the window. And I think that year there was this massive flood, and the water had risen like some crazy amount, like it was like 20 feet or something. And so it had totally washed out a lot of like the landscape around me, and a lot of people's like gardens and like farmland had been totally like flooded and like washed away. And so I sort of was connecting like this flood with the landscape that had been like drenched and soaked in this river water, and thinking about all the flowers that were around us that were washed away and by this flood. And so that's where the title Flowers Drink the River came from. Was just like imagining, I think it's a more elegant way of like imagining what happened, but this landscape being flooded by the river.
It's a really powerful title. I don't know why, but both the spiders net and the title start me to think about the sense of community of this work for many reasons, like the fact that I connected the flowers to the river. Like if there is a river, the flowers can grow because flowers drink the river, and at the same time the spider nets, it's like I saw it like as the community, the connection between people that is super fragile, something that you have to take care, or it's like can be broken at any time. It's really something that you have to take care of it.
Yeah. No, I mean that's a really great. I don't often think. I don't think my brain usually thinks in metaphor, and I think all the metaphors happen sort of like after I take the photographs, when I'm looking at them, and I'll look back at the photographs and I'll be like, oh, maybe this sort of like speaks to that, to this or to that, and it just sort of like, I think all the metaphor just sort of like comes to me after I make the photographs, whereas like when I'm making them, I'm sort of like, my brain has sort of like left my body in a way, and I'm not really like thinking about meaning, and I'm just sort of like making, and really just like pure beauty in a way.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to hear people's like takes on certain photographs and in what they think they mean, or like what they mean to them. And I think that's also usually more important even than my own meaning that I've given, because it's like once it's out of my hands, it's like it's really about other people engaging with it and apart from me. And I think that's really special about having sort of ambiguous photographs sometimes.
Yeah, it's really fascinating and also really powerful. Do you see the aesthetic of your images as a political, and if yes, why?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like everything is truly political, and it's I really believe that like authorship is impossible to separate from the work itself, and like people's identities and like their motivations behind making the work, I think are just political, no matter what, and like, yeah, I think this book for me, and especially at this time and in this political climate, was sort of a testament to queer community and my experience as like a trans woman, and in a place that is not the safest and not the most welcoming to people like me, and so sort of like pushing through that and living my life and continuing to survive and to not give up, and is political in and of itself. I think that and with this body of work, I think that like my goal is sort of like to create this like alternate reality, or this sort of like this like, I guess this like vision of a utopia where humans and like queer people and trans people are existing in the world with nature and sort of like thriving and like experiencing like these beautiful and like magical moments. And and I think that sort of like that striving to sort of see a world like that is I guess political. And but I'm never like making a photograph with like a political motivation. Like I'm not thinking of any specific sort of like message with each individual photograph, but I think overall just like the act of like creating something, and the act of like working with my community and like working with my friends and like, and also shooting in the environment that I shoot in, is sort of an act of like, like reclaiming like joy in a way, or like finding like beauty amidst this like destruction and this like sort of like fraught time in history. And but yeah, again, that's sort of like an undercurrent where it's like I'm not, the photographs themselves aren't trying to make any specific political message. It's just sort of like I think because of who I am and because of like where I'm photographing and because of who's in the photographs, it is political, and it is like a search for belonging and community.
And then you decide to like put the text just in the end of the book, and just this text, this short. It's really a beautiful description of what happened probably during the process of making this book, right?
It's hard to put text in a book and have it be like vague enough to like leave something open to to a viewer's imagination. And for me, I was like, I wanted to, but I also thought it was important to at least sort of give like it's a pretty vague description, but with this book it felt important enough to tell people or to show people like what I was going through when I made these photographs, and sort of like set the scene in some way. But yeah, I don't know, without being too specific, I think it's important.
Yeah, like a bit of context.
Yeah, because normally I wouldn't like add any text, but I think that like, for me, the sort of like story behind why I made these photographs is just as important as the images, in a way, just because it felt like such a fraught time for me. And like, I think.
And I'm really curious about also this part. This one are probably the title of the pictures, right?
Yeah. Just that was sort of a like this design decision that happened like at the very end. I hadn't actually thought about doing that, but that was my publishers, Gregory and Rachel, sort of like came up with that idea, and I was like, I thought it was beautiful, and it made a lot of sense too, where it's like I really am, I am photographing at night almost all the time, and sometimes I'm not really even paying attention to like the moon, like where the stage of the moon, because if I'm not photographing the sky, I'm so focused on what's on the earth. But I think that it really made a lot of sense. It's just sort of this nice design decision that tied it together.
I feel like the picture often describe a moment of change or suspension between one state of matter and another. It made me think of a concept of metamorphosis a lot. Was this in your mind too, or not?
I think it goes back to sort of what I was saying, where like it's when I'm like making things, I feel like my brain has totally, I'm sure I'm making things for some reason, and there's something that's happening in my life that's, making me, make certain decisions with the camera. But I feel like for the most part, I'm just sort of like, I've sort of like left my body in a way, and I'm just sort of like, thinking, it's really like playful. It's just about me like finding certain forms and shapes and just like things, and but also, I can't deny the fact that whatever is going on in my life is absolutely affecting what I'm making. Of course, it's very situational. And so I think for metamorphosis or like change, I think like when I was making this book, it's like the 2 years that this book sort of encompasses were quite like dramatic for me in change, and pretty insanely, from 2022 to 2024, just my body and my brain chemicals were completely altered because of hormones. Like I think, and just in those 2 years, my body itself, like my physical body, my like everything, my like fat redistribution, my like my breasts, my hips, my face have like changed in this like in pretty insane way. Like seeing a picture from when I started this book till now, it's like I'm almost like you would never know it was me. It's like it's amazing. I think it's like it's hard to look at old pictures of myself, but it's also like seeing how I like just look now and seeing that metamorphosis is like is exciting. And so I think like throughout the book there is this like and also just like photographing nature, and like nature goes through constant like change every single year and every single season, and just like photographing the same landscape over and over, and showing those changes and things blooming and things dead and things washed away and things growing. It's like I really, yeah, I think that was absolutely in the back of my brain this whole time making this book, was like I need to document this change that I'm going through, and seeing it in the landscape and seeing it in the people around me, and like in my new community, and like is definitely a sort of like undercurrent throughout the whole book.
Yeah, it's something that I can see in, of course, in all the pictures of the mud. It seems like creatures coming out from this mud lake, and without a specific form, still like they are like, yeah, there is a kind of transformation. And then again in a lot of pictures also, is it the one of the cave, these things that probably are changing each second forever, like all the time. And again, also in the pictures like this, that it's not the picture itself, it's more the point of view. There is this kind of movement from the darkness to the light, walking through this cave and going outside, and it's not a proper transformation, but it's a change of state, a change of how can I say it, like a change of landscape. Like you are going to see what are you going to see outside this cave. Yeah, it's something that I feel in almost all the book. And then you have this strange snake that seems to have two heads, and probably it's not, but
oh no, it's just one. Yeah, I kind of see what you mean. Like it kind of looks, it's like it's the snake's tail is like kind of curved, and I feel like it kind of like looks like the shape of a head almost.
Yeah, a lot. And Pia, do you remember which one is the first picture that you took?
Yeah, so the first picture I took is that deer photograph of me and the deer in the field.
What is it?
And it should be, it's after this one. I think it's forward maybe a few photographs. Keep going. It's right there. So that's the first photograph in the book, and that was sort of, actually this is the photograph that I'm writing about in the back of the book. Mm-hmm. So that text is about this one. And yeah, so I took that like right before sort of like all of this change in my life started happening again, and it's crazy. It's crazy because it's a self-portrait too, in a lot of ways. And it's like, I just seeing how different I look in that photograph, to now, it feels like I'm photographing, a friend or something. It's very like, it's like an alien thing to me to see that photograph, but that photograph sort of started this whole project in a way. Or I guess it didn't initiate, but it was sort of like the right, the calm before the storm, maybe is what you would say, like before everything started changing, and my life was basically like uprooted in the best way possible. So yeah, it's a special picture.
Yeah. Was you covered with leaf?
So it's a ghillie suit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've ever read anything about this photograph. I've talked about it like a couple times, but it's basically like before I had left for Maine, and before all of this, the rest of the book sort of started. This was taken at my grandparents' house, and this is at the end of my grandpa's apple orchard. So for like 3 or 4 nights, I had been seeing that deer before this all summer. Sort of had been seeing that deer would sort of walk out of the woods right to the left of this where this photograph is, and they would come to the orchard and start eating the apples, either the low hanging apples or the apples that had fallen onto the ground. And so it was sort of a thing every night they would come, and what I presume was probably the same like family of deer would come and eat these apples. And so I had this idea. I was like, I want to figure out how to get like to sort of get a photograph of these deer with my large format camera, which it's something that I had never done, and seemed almost impossible, because it's like, how do you focus the camera on the deer without scaring them? How do you take the photograph? And obviously you only get one sheet of film, which makes it even harder. And so I was I had sort of been like thinking about how to do this. And I started tying this like really long piece of twine. I had like 100 feet of twine that I would tie to the camera. I would tie it to the shutter of the camera, and then I would bolt the camera into the ground so that I could pull the twine and the camera wouldn't tip over. And so I had this like sort of this contraption set up with this janky camera with piece of twine hanging from it, and I did a few tests like early in the day where I would pull the twine and make sure the shutter fired, and then so once I had that set up, I would move it, I'd bring it back inside every night, but I would for like 3 or 4 nights, I was out there with this camera, and sort of basically I had put a stake in the ground, which you can actually see in like which is next to me, that piece of wood. So I put that piece of stake, that wooden stake in the ground, and focused the camera on that. And so I was like, as long as I can get the deer to go like, on that plane of view, then I can get them in focus. So I focused the camera on that, and covered myself in scent killer, which is just, something that hunters use, and covered myself in scent killer, and then put a ghillie suit on, which was, maybe not necessary, but it was, part of the sort of like aesthetic of the photo to have this ghillie suit on. And maybe it was necessary too. I don't know, because I only tried it with that. And so then I had a tray of like crushed up apples, which deer are really attracted to, like the apples, of course. And when they're crushed, it sort of like releases like their scent, and attracts deer more. And so I basically, started the first night. I sort of like sat there for like 5 hours, and I was like, I didn't hear anything, that there were no deer. And I'm sure that like at that point they had like seen me. Maybe they had seen this weird figure, and probably I had moved a little bit, and so they never came the first night. The second night I was sitting there again for like 4 hours, and and I should mention, all this time I'm holding, it's hard to see unless the photo's really big, but I'm holding a little piece of twine, I think in my right hand. And so the second night I did the same thing, where I sat there and just like completely still, like, I was trying to breathe really quietly, and was just like not moving at all. And it was pretty meditative, actually. And also kind of just insane, but I sat there, and I finally that second night had heard like some footsteps, some deer in the woods behind me. And, my heart like sank, because it's like exciting. And it's also like, I was so nervous, and trying so hard not to move. And so I heard the deer, and I could hear them like walking like closer, and they must have like seen me or noticed me, because they like, they made their one of them made like a grunt, their like, defensive grunting noise, and then they all bolted back into the woods. And so I was like, all right. Third night, I went back out there for a few hours and sat there in the same way. And this time, at some point, I can't, maybe like an hour after I had sat down, I heard them coming out through the woods, and they were walking really quietly. And they got a little bit closer that time. And then I shifted like a tiny bit. I think I like moved the tray a little bit, and they like stopped, and then I could hear them like bolt back into the woods. And then I think it was the fourth night that I was out there, and I did the same thing. And this time I was like completely still, and they came. I heard them walking up through the woods behind me, and it's sort of like I couldn't turn to see where they were, of course, but I could sort of like feel them, and so just, I think like 20 minutes went by, and they had slowly been like making their way closer, because I think that they were probably skeptical and probably could sense that I was there, and so they sort of like, walked really, really like slowly up to me, and as soon as I like sort of felt, I could feel them next to me. I couldn't see them, but I could feel their presence. I pulled the shutter, and the flash went off, and they bolted into the woods. And then it was like, I think 2 days after that, I developed the negative, and really like wasn't expecting anything of it. I was like, I'm sure that I was pretty confident that everything was going to be out of focus or something. The deer were maybe too far, and I had like miscalculated. But yeah, I saw that. I think the deer to the right of me is like almost like tack sharp, is super in focus. And so yeah, it was this moment of like, it was like this revelatory moment where I was just shocked that it worked. And then you can see there's like a third deer in the background. You can see your eyes.
Yeah. These two
right there.
Is it this one?
Yeah, that one right there. And so when I saw that in the background, I was like, I was just so excited about that that's worked out. And it like, it's sort of like it sort of got me also excited about taking photographs again, where I hadn't really been making anything for so long, and then to make this photograph and have everything work out like perfectly, and was just like the most exciting moment that I think I've had with a camera in maybe like my whole life, to be honest.
They were really, really close to you. I could be completely scared about that, to have a big animal just close to me. I'm from the city, so I'm not really used to animals.
Yeah, that makes sense. Deer are like, deer are mostly pretty peaceful animals, but they will like kick you. I've had a friend that was like charged at by a deer one time, and I think she was like too close to the fawn or something. But yeah, so I was scared, but I think that having the flash go off sort of like, I think it like sort of like stunned them to the point where I think they sort of froze up a little bit. It was really strange too, like feeling just like not being able to see them, but to be able to like feel them. And it's like, I don't even know if I was like feeling their breath or feeling like, you can feel sort of like the like atmosphere, like the air change around you when something's like really close. But it was like this really strange sensation.
So this leads directly to this question: what is the role of animals in this project?
Like when I'm working on something, I mean, I guess I'm always sort of working on the same thing in a way, where I'm always photographing my home, and I'm photographing the landscape around it, and I'm photographing the people that are around me. And so I think just to do that and feel like I've shown my surroundings in a completed way, I think that like engaging with, yeah, in showing the animals that also exist around me is sort of just as important as showing like the landscapes, or as the people, where it's like, and then in, typically I'm only photographing animals that you see at night and that aren't really like offering their presence to like humans, that don't really want to be around humans, or don't really like intend to be seen by a human, because they're nocturnal or they're afraid of us. But I think that because I exist in the world at night most of the time, especially when I was making this work, where I was just alone in the woods at night, like pretty much every night for the entire spring, summer, and fall. And because of that, I was able to see these animals regularly, like deer, raccoons, porcupines, just things that you don't always see every single day. I was sort of invited. Feel like I was allowed like access to like their world for those times when I was out, and was able to just sit there and sort of like watch animals exist, and sort of, yeah, they have become family in a way because of that, where it's just like they're just so familiar to me. And also really, I think it's fun to figure out how to photograph these animals too, because they are, especially with a large format camera, they're not easy to photograph. Either like sort of building a trust with them, or sort of like figuring out ways, like with the sort of like camera with a piece of twine, figuring out ways to like photograph them, and is a fun like challenge and thing to do for me.
Can I share with you a short stories that happened to me?
Yeah, definitely.
Like some years ago, I was with a friend. We were in a border between two states, and we were not allowed to go through because we had some problem with papers, documents. I don't remember exactly. Probably with the insurance of the car. So we were stuck there in the middle of nowhere. And it was crazy because it was the first time that I experienced something like that. Of course, I'm super lucky because I born in Europe, so it's pretty easy to travel normally. And that time it was not happening. So we were both quite frustrated. And I remember I was watching a group of dogs, probably living there. And they were the dogs were just crossing the border several times when we were just waiting there to understand if the paper was right or not. And it was the first time that I thought, fuck, we build it. Like, we build all these rules that, you need to have the papers, you need to have some rights, you need to have a lot of things just cross an imaginary line. And yeah, watching this dog just going in, in a country, and then 10 minutes after going in the other one, and no one cares because they are animals. So they can experience this kind of freedom that for some reason we decide to, I don't know, we were not allowed to do it, to have the same freedoms that animals has. And when I saw this project, and when I saw all these animals that are in this book, it really reminded me that things that happened to me that time, like the fact that you have all these animals, and it's it's really beautiful that you decide to have this self-portrait with the animals. In that moment, I would love to be an animal, because if I could be an animal, I don't have problem of all this problem that we decide and we build, So, yeah, that's it.
Thanks for sharing that. I love that story. Yeah, it's something that like it's funny to think about it in that way.
And Pia, which one is
Yeah.
the last picture?
It's either, I think it might be the mud photograph where my two friends in the mud on top of each other. That one right there. I think that I'm pretty sure that's the last photograph in the book. It's hard to remember because I made like in the last month of production, I made like 5 photographs that are all in the book, and so it's hard to like. But I think that was the last one I made.
How did the metamorphosis and the modification of your inner landscape influence the photographic landscape that you build? And also, because we are speaking about the first and the last picture in the book, do you think like your process changed the way you take pictures from the start to the end of the project?
Yeah, like the process of like transitioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And it's like it's something that's hard to like pinpoint what that change would be like in like technical or like practical terms, because it's like the more like I sort of like became myself and the more that I sort of like transitioned and started to like sort of become the person that I wanted to be for most of my life. It's like I think the more that those changed, those things, happened, in the more that I like sort of blossomed, I guess, is like the more I was viewing like the people around me and the landscape around me with like more of like a love and like reverence and just like maybe even like devotedness, where it's like I think that transitioning for me has been this thing where before I started transitioning, I felt so so disconnected from my own body and my own feelings, and I think that like it caused me to sort of like um to remove myself from my own life almost for most of my life, where I was like I was living, but I felt sort of like a ghost of a person in a way where um nothing felt like nothing I did for myself or nothing I did in my life felt like it really had consequence over me, because it was just sort of like this. I was like basically living someone else's life, it felt like. And so I think like as transitioning happened and sort of like went on and sort of like I started to change, it was like I finally felt like I could actually like experience the things I was experiencing, and it wasn't through some other person. It was like through myself for once, and which was a pretty like has been a honestly like an insane experience. I feel like it's like being born again, or it's like being like yeah, it's like going through puberty again, and it's like feeling like this, just like I'm like becoming myself finally. And so I think that change itself like had an impact on the way that I was photographing people and the way that I was like engaging with people and the landscape, and like um also just like the way that I was like seeing and like experiencing like beauty and um like both visually, both like sensorily, both like in every single way. So I think that, and it's hard to say like, it's hard to point to photos and be like, and sort of like pick out those specifics, but it's like I think it's just the project in general, like every single photograph is um sort of like following me through this like process of like becoming, in a way. And it's hard to like put words to that because it's like it's very much like a feeling, and it's like kind of like isn't really like tangible. But yeah, I think that's just the truth of it, really.
Is the picture of the horse the one of the last or one of the first pictures?
I think that was like right in the middle of creating the work.
We're not going to speak about this picture. Like I can imagine that horses are quite scared of fire.
Yeah.
Seeing this this horse so quiet in front of a burning house, it feels like it's an affirmation of a right to exist. Something weird that you think, no, it's not possible, but yeah, it exists and it's there and you can watch it. And I think it's an amazing choice for as the first picture of the book.
I'm glad. Yeah, I think that it's a very heavy photograph. There's a lot to unpack in it.
Why you decide to put this picture as the first one in the book?
Well, I actually originally didn't want that photograph in the book at all, just because it sort of felt like it was from a different body of work, and it was made with a different process than the other ones. And so it's very much didn't feel like I didn't want it to be part of the book at all. And it's I told my publishers that I didn't want to use it, and they were just like, "Oh, you have to use this photograph," and they ended up talking me into it. And so I think the only way that I justified using it was actually showing the original contact print of it. And so they sort of made this facsimile of the contact print to go in the book, because yeah, it felt like something that was it was almost too punchy. It was too much for me. And so I think the only way I could really rightly use that photograph was to show the contact, the dark room print, and to have it sort of be sort of separate from the other photographs. And it's in a way.
A weird question. Your images are often very complex. Are there any photos that you couldn't include in the book because they didn't turn out well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I feel like, with spiderwebs are something I'm always working with. And I've sort of created this method over the years of being able to capture spiderwebs from the landscape, and actually bring them back to my studio and work with them, and drape them over things, and put them in between plants. And it's this really super elaborate and also sensitive process that often fails. And I often end up breaking the spider web before it's ready, or I end up I feel like I'm kind of making sculptures with these spider webs, and yeah, a lot of the times they don't work out. And when I was making this, I had been trying for months to create this photograph of these multiple spider webs draped over these lilies that I had picked from the garden. And I just couldn't seem to get the photograph to look how I wanted it to. I tried dozens of times. I used so many sheets of film just trying to get this photograph, and there was always something wrong with it. The web would break halfway in the middle of the shoot, or the web would just not look as defined as I wanted it to. And so yeah, there was a couple photographs of spider webs draped over flowers that I wanted to be in the book, and didn't work out. And I did end up including one of those in the book, which is the one of the spider web with the mica dust all over it, in all of my friend's hands, and that one worked out.
Is it this one?
And no, it's the one with the spider web with the one on the back cover.
In the back cover,
yeah, that photograph. And so, which is that photograph is also in the book somewhere. But yeah, that photo took so many tries, and it worked out finally, and which is really exciting. But I had more of them that I was trying to make in sort of a similar fashion that just never worked out. But which I've actually been working on this summer in the studio, and so we'll see. I haven't developed those negatives yet, but we'll see if they worked out. But yeah, those ones, I feel like the photos with the spider webs, like in the studio, are always really hard to make, and take so many different attempts to get them.
Pia, you have a question from one of the guys that follow the podcast. It's Victor Kretsis, and he sent to me this question for you. I was wondering if your decision to use large format had anything to do with what you were going through that time. Since the process is so physically demanding and requires you to be fully present, do you think it helped deepen your connection with the environment as you waited for nature to respond? It's a long question, and my English is so shitty. Sorry.
No, and it makes sense. Yeah, I think like I've been shooting large format for the past I guess 6 years maybe, and before that I was shooting pretty much solely on point and shoot 35 millimeter cameras, really small and really easy. Sort of you just point and click and capture whatever is in front of you, and I think the shift to large format was really me wanting a little bit more control over lighting and over the result of the image, and also wanting more detail. And I tend to photograph small things, like I'm photographing spider webs, or I'm photographing flowers, or I really like to photograph these things that have this incredible amount of detail, like flowers do and like spider webs do. And so really the only, I tried medium format, and it wasn't, I couldn't get as much detail as I wanted. And so I think that was really the initial move to large format for me. But it has also, it's taught me patience in a different way. And it's taught me each photograph takes so much longer than I'd like it to sometimes. Sometimes I'm out there for hours trying to make the same photograph, and I'm trying different lighting, and I'm breaking webs, and things are falling over, and it's it can be frustrating. And I think working through that has made me a more patient person, which and also I think because of that, it's made me sort of photograph and sort of interact with the environment in a more careful way, which is I really value on in many ways, of just really being careful with the things you're interacting with, and showing them, being gentle, and being mindful of every single thing happening around you. And it's yeah, and I think that maybe that ties also in with this project, and with what I was going through at the time too. And just because I think patience is a huge part in transitioning, and it's something that sometimes I wish I could fast forward years and just sort of have all these changes just happen in an instant, and not have to wait, because I think waiting can be a really painful thing when it's with transitioning specifically, waiting, and sort of the body changes at a sometimes a pretty slow rate, and so I think the way that I photograph, and the way that I've had to live my life for the past couple years, has been a real test of my patience. Photography, I think this large format really speaks to that too. And thanks to Victor for asking that question.
Yeah, thanks to Victor. It's a really beautiful question. You have to ask him to write some other questions for other episodes, probably.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Thank you, Victor.
do you have a specific music that you suggest the people to listen watching this book?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like sometimes my like what I'm listening to can either really work with what I'm making. Sometimes it just it doesn't always work. And yeah, while I was making this work, I was listening to a lot of Anaroxan, which is like it's more like ambient and um sort of like it's almost like it's pretty like meditative music, but a lot of Anaroxan. I've been like a huge fan of Grouper, like Liz Harris since I was in high school, and Grouper is something that's always on. That's always on. I'm trying to think. There's a this sort of like crust like sort of like black metal project called Gullhammer from Japan that I've been really obsessed with for most of my life, and I was listening to a lot of Gullhammer at the time that I was making this book. Um, it's like they're like an all woman, Japanese like black metal band. A lot of Gullhammer. What else? A lot of Salem. I feel like I listen to a lot of like trap influenced music. Salem. Um, even like I know this is like probably you wouldn't see this in photographs, but I like Young Lean a lot. Wicked Phase brings Eternal. Yeah, a lot of old punk. I like the Germs a lot. I was listening to the Germs, Gun Club, Ultra Caro, which is also like not something that you might imagine. I don't, it's funny. Like I don't know what when people see my work. I don't know what I'm interested in knowing what other people's soundtracks would be for my work because I feel like it's often quite different maybe than what I'm hearing. But gosh, there's so many. I feel like yeah, music is just always on in the studio. So I'm trying to like recount what I've been listening to, and but yeah, I feel like those are like that's like a good group of of artists that were sort of like always playing.
I think it's a really interesting question. What kind of music you other people could be really cool, curious.
Also a lot of Hank Williams Sr. too.
A lot of stuff.
I listen to a lot of country too. Oh, and Lucinda Williams, I would say was kind of a constant in the car music for me when I was driving around making photographs.
Yeah, do you learn something during this project that can help other photographer to do a better job?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I mean, I think it's always just make things that make you happy, really. And I like, I don't have I feel like that's the most useful advice is just make things that bring you joy and make you feel, and I guess like restore your wonder for the world, and also being just like true to like what you're photographing. Like I think for me it's always been really important to photograph like the things that do mean a lot to me and that are part of my life. And I know a lot of photographers like work on projects that are removed from themselves, and I'm glad that can bring people joy and wonder. But I think speaking from my own experiences, it's like things that I photograph are really part of my life every single day, and um and that's really the only way that I can make things is from that like perspective. And yeah, just be real.
And the very last question is, can you suggest us a book and a photographer to have in one of the next episode of the podcast?
As soon as I heard that, I was going to say Maya Daniels, because I love Maya Daniels, and her work is amazing. But you just had Maya on, didn't you?
Yeah, and also like she suggested your book, so it's a cross.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Maya. I'm trying to think who else in it. I will be honest, like I don't look at a lot of photography books. Like I feel like all my inspiration comes from music, and and I think that's a thing because I just don't have the money to buy a photo book, so I don't do it. And you know, I probably own like 10 photo books maybe. And if I had unlimited money, I would be buying. I'm sure I'd be buying books, but yeah. Let me think. Oh, do you know Batya Suter? She works with all found photographs and like archival images, but Batya, I don't really know how to say her name, but yeah, she has some books out with the Roma publications or like Roma books. But I'm a huge fan of her work and just the way that she like obsessively digs through archives. Christina Razkova, her last book was called Bliss of Girlhood. But I've never actually seen that book. But I follow her on Instagram, and her work is really amazing and exciting. I think she's from Russia. Yeah, I mean, there's so many photographers. I just can't think of them off the top of my head.
Yeah, but one is enough.
Okay, and I can send you, if I think of any, I can send you some others if you want them. But
yeah, of course, always appreciate it. Okay, thank you so much, Pia. I think we reached the end of the episode. I really enjoy it, and yeah, thank you so much for sharing all your process.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really nice to talk with you. Thanks for having me. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Gabriella, and thank you everyone for listening, and thank you for taking the time to ask me these questions. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. It was very beautiful. So thank you so much. Thank you, Pia. Thank you, everyone, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.